What's up, everybody? We're here with Kriyavan Kurzweil, and we're here to talk about Nadi Leaves, which I really don't know a lot about. But Tadavan, could you tell us a little bit about Nadi Leaves? Tadavan actually is somebody who I know of, goes around and seeks out sages, and he learns from them, and he also kind of dissects how they are being, and he like tags like the real ones versus the not real ones. And so I'm really excited to hear from him. I've spoken to him before a lot about this, but let's start with Nadi Leaves. Tadavan, what are those?
So I think a lot of people are familiar with the term Akashic record. And basically,
The Akash.
Yeah. So Edgar Casey, I think, really popularized that. I think a lot of people use the term in what I would consider watered down. So for me, an Akashic record, you're going to know intimate details about my life that should be objective. And you're also going to connect that to things that happened in my past life. Now, not every Nadi Leaf reading, they're different chapters, will delve into your past lives that much. A lot of it is your past in this life, your present, and your future. And they get pretty intimate on these details. And the way that they find your leaf, which was written thousands and thousands of years ago by Agastya. Well, frequently Agastya. There are other rishis, sages that wrote these leaves. And in Mumbai, they have a slightly different but similar version called the Book of Bhrigu. So basically, you give them your thumbprints for men, it's right thumb. For women, left thumb. You do 6 of them, and they go looking for it. And then
6 of them?
Yeah, just so they can see it.
Like 6
thumbprints.
different versions.
Yeah.
Can I slow you down for a little bit? Just for those people who've never heard of the Akashic records, we're talking about like a hall or a library of records that's accessed by like a psychic type of person, and they can see into your multiple lifetimes that you've lived. And that's because there's a sort of like a collective unconscious that ties us all together. And there's people in this realm that can access the records of all of our lives. Is that your perspective of the Akashic records?
And I think another interesting field is the field of psychometry within archaeology.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be psychometry. It doesn't have to be archaeology. You could give me the set of keys of a friend of yours, and if I had the gift, I would know lots of intimate information about them. Psychometry with archaeology is you're giving people ancient artifacts without telling them what it is, and they start seeing stuff and documenting stuff. And there have been archaeologists that have actually relied on this and gotten information that they didn't know to be true at that time, that only proven to be true later.
Okay. And then when you say Nadi Leaves, I'm thinking of like a tree leaf.
Yeah.
What is...
That's accurate. So it was written down on these tree leaves many, many, many thousands of years ago, knowing that at some point, certain people would come to ask about their life. And you give them these thumbprints, and then they go digging through these scrolls. Now, they don't have the original. It's been, rewritten over time. And they actually, in Tamil Nadu, have a library of Nadi Leaves.
So they're actually physical things.
Yeah.
Then there's a limited amount.
I imagine there's not a ton of them. I mean, not everyone's destined to get a Nadi Leaf reading. With the link that I use, they say most of the time we find it. Sometimes we don't. If we don't, you'll be removed.
Okay. So how did you come across this, and like walk us through how you learned about this, and then who did you have to seek out to find your leaf? Yeah.
So I first heard about it when I was in India. I met this American man who was living, I forget where he was living, but he was living in Southeast Asia, but he was visiting India. We were at the same ashram. And I think I already knew about it. And he mentioned this reading, and it was so specific. And they basically said, your father's really sick. He's going to pass away soon. And you need to repair that relationship so you don't have to be reincarnated. And he goes back home, tells his dad to go to the doctor. And his dad had terminal cancer. And they repaired the relationship, and that departure ended. The other thing that he was told, he was married a woman with a stain on her front tooth. And turns out he marries a woman with a calcium deposit on one of her front teeth. So it was the specificity, and there were other things, obviously, but these were 2 particular thing. And it stayed with me, and I knew I always wanted it. Well, eventually I found a service online for it. And a few of my friends actually tried it out before I did. And they were really curious. And, I kind of grilled them on the specifics, and it was very detailed. So, for instance, with one, they asked her, "Did you have metal in your left leg?" And she said, "Yes." And they go, "Do you still have it?" And she goes, "No." And they said, "It's not this leaf." And they go on looking at another leaf, which I thought was really interesting. So to me, this kind of opens up two possibilities with these bundle of leaves that they're looking for. One is that our karmas are sometimes so similar to other people that they have to figure out which one it is. The other possibility, which I kind of lean towards, is there is some elements of free will. And even though certain things are fixed, other things, there's some wiggle room. And these different leaves represent different choices you could have made, different timelines.
Okay, so where do you actually have to go? Have you been to
No, I didn't
like
go.
where
I did
they?
it through the
All
service.
right.
It's a Zoom call, right? So you
Okay.
get on the,
Technology.
yes, technology. And they said, as much as you might be into the idea of going to the actual library, it's hot, it's stuffy, it's like, instead of the convenience of your own home, where you have they get you a translator, you have the reader, and you have a moderator, which if for any reason there's any confusion or any technical difficulties, they help.
Okay. So you decide you want to do
Yes.
this, and then what do you do?
So I send them my thumbprints. Sometimes they get back to you faster than others. I would say it was a week or less. And they said, "We found your bundle of leaves, or we think we have found it. So let's set up a, a, a Zoom call, and let's see what comes up." So we get on the call, and they just kind of go through a bunch of, you just say correct or incorrect. And then eventually you kind of get into the leaf where it's suddenly just boom, 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 boom. And then they told me my mom's first name, my dad's first name, family dynamic, the amount of siblings I have.
Like exact first name?
Yeah, yeah. And I've had
So
friends, so my mom's name is Betty, and my dad's name is Stanley. And they said those two names.
they said, "Is your mom's name
They
Betty?"
go, "Your mother's name is Betty, like with the accent." And I was like, "Yeah."
Okay.
And it was like hearing that, I was like, wow. And then they got my dad's name too.
All right. And what's the difference between that and then the person just like how do you know they're reading a leaf as opposed to just sort of being psychic? Because I've had an Indian guy walk up to me in the farmer's market.
I know who you're talking about. That guy, they have guys like that. So
I think Yoga Man or something like that was his name. And he said he told me the amount of siblings in my family. He told me what my favorite color was. He told me to write down the amount of siblings and the favorite color. Actually, now that I think about it, maybe he was just an expert at decoding what I was writing down on a piece of paper. I
think more likely mind reading.
Okay, so I'm casting out a field, and he's picking that up.
Yeah, if I had to get, more along lines of mind reading, or that there's certain things that are on our forehead that we're not aware of.
Yeah,
give that stuff away to people that are really in tune.
Right. So my question is, how do you know it's the leaf and not something like that?
I think that's a really good question. I talked to the guy that started the organization. I think he's German, and he had some profound Nadi leaf readings, and he insists that it's separate. From my viewpoint, I don't care. Like as long as the information's on point and it's beneficial, I love it. But I am inclined to believe them. And that was my experience. But they went into many other details. What was going on in my life at that moment, the year my spiritual journey really kicked off, all of these other things. And they also give you remedies. So within the Vedic system, there's a lot of emphasis on remedies. And the way they see it as, I think if someone's a nutritionist, they might be like, okay, you're having some issues with your gallbladder, liver, or whatever it might be. And not saying that they won't mention that, but they'll more be looking at the standpoint of you have issues with this planet, some challenges, some planetary challenges. And the planetary challenges are your karma, the karma you were born with. and family karma and things like that. So they'll give remedies, and these remedies could just be chanting mantras, which is all mind work. But other people will get suggestions for certain pujas or fire ceremonies or things like that to help mitigate or erase some of their karmic challenge.
All right, so that's all on the leaves. And I'm going to go back to what you said. You said that the person that wrote out these leaves knew that in the future we would go searching for them. And so what is, like, are the leaves only written for those that come search for them? And how does somebody who's watching or listening to this, like, can anybody go do this?
I mean, I think anyone can attempt, but I think only certain people are called to do it. You know, I've had a lot of friends that told me they wanted to do it and they never followed through. So, you know, I just don't think everyone has this particular karma. It's a certain lineage and a connection. And I think those that do and you feel called to, do it. It's great. I mean, for me, it was. And I think it's a lot of affirmation, confirmatory stuff, things that maybe I felt or knew intuitively or had been told by other people in my life. They brought it up.
All right. So I understand that it's really personal, but is there anything that you can share?
Oh, I'm not shy. I will share. I'll share.
Is relevant. Well, I'm looking more for like what, like, was anything revealed to you about like humanity or what we're doing in this reality or what the purpose of life is that could be useful to people?
Well, it's more about your journey, right? And I think everyone's journey is different. But I think one of the things that stood out for me, there were a couple, but one was just, they said to me, you're a citizen of the world. Everywhere you go, that is your home. Those are your people. And I've always felt that. And they said, where you're from, you cannot be. Your destiny's not there. And in that way, they meant, you know, I was born in New York and raised in New Jersey, and my destiny's not there. And that's something I felt as well. But they just hammered it in such a way of, yeah, I get that. And then the other thing they brought up, and this is much further down the line, and I'd been told this blessing by a yogi maybe 6 years ago or longer. And they said, at some point, your 7 chakras will fully open and you'll be able to see the past, present, and future of yourself and others. I'm not at that level of sight at this moment, but that's something they spoke to me about. And that was a blessing that a yogi had given to me years ago.
And the Nadi Leaves talked about that?
They did. And I was like, whoa, you know, and everyone's leaf is so distinct and goes into their specific journey. And all they really had to go off of was my thumbprint and just going correct, incorrect. And eventually they pin down your birthday. And then once they do that, so they are, I guess, utilizing Vedic astrology with the thumbprint. And they go into a lot of detail. Family dynamic, when people's health challenges will get better or worse, when you might meet your partner, you know, these kind of major life markers.
Cool. And so you did that. Yeah. Anything else to share? Because the next question I want to ask you is like, what else are you into? Yeah, because that's something that you did. And then what else is going on? What's in the pipeline right now? And of terms of like experiences that may not be normal.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, also the remedies, like chant these mantras. I've been very consistent with that. And, you know, I also go to see a lot of yogis, saints, mystics, and holy places. Can I really say that chanting these mantras versus going there and seeing these people with what benefited me specifically? I don't know. But I'm always, you know, mantras always been good for me. And they give me some mantras to chant related to planetary challenges. And I just say, yeah, great. One of the other things I've really been into is I go to see these, you know, these great beings. So one is a woman traveling around the U.S. now. Her name is Amma Karunamani, and she spent about 10 years in a remote forest with wild tigers, just meditating in what they'll call tapas. And I had really incredible experiences. I didn't know much about her when she came to New York in 2009, but I saw her photo in a ad on in a Kripalu magazine. Nothing to do with Kripalu. That's just the magazine it was. And as soon as I saw her, I thought she was coming to New York. I was thinking of going to Seattle to see someone else. I said, no, I'll just stay put and she'll come here. And I would just sort of talk to her photo every day without even really thinking about it. But if you'd asked me about it, I would say that I'm just eccentric. And I get there and she walks past me and all of a sudden she just stops and she turns around. She looks right at me, smiles and waves. And I'm kind of dumbfounded and I don't fully believe it, but I do. I'm sure we've all had that experience who's, been on a seeking journey. And I don't find this out till later, but there was a guy with me who was kind of an atheist and I'd used my healing gift on his ear infection and it helped. And he thought he was curious. And he turns to my friend at that moment and he says, "It's weird how you weird spiritual people seem to know each other." And I thought, well, if I'm delusional, at least I share my delusions with the atheist here. So that was kind of a comforting moment. And then I sat there for a long time, maybe 6-7 hours, what they call individual blessing day. She'll do this in most cities. And I almost left before I got my official blessing. But I look at, honestly, still do. You sit there in front of the presence of a being that has done this level of austerities and spiritual practices. They're going to uplift you. They're going to reduce the burden or weight of some of your karmic challenges. And suddenly I got really angry without any particular reason. Probably the angriest I've ever been without a cattle. And I thought I was going to implode with rage. And then I had the outside thought of, okay, you weren't this bad of a person 20 minutes ago. This is probably going to pass. And it did. And I went up to her and she touched me here on my third eye. And it felt like my head cracked open. And I was just sobbing. And I'm not a sobber. It's not that I won't cry. I just don't generally sob. And I just felt all this weight had been ripped off. And I was just shell shocked in the most positive way. And that was the first time I saw her. That was 2009. And then she didn't really talk to me much for the next few years. And I just, wherever she would tell me, then she started telling me to come places and I would just go there. And sometimes she would say it out loud and sometimes I felt it internally. And I just have been spending a lot of time with her. But I go to see any of the saints that come around that I can be in their presence where it just lines up. And I try to do that as much as possible. And I invite other people to come and see them if they have a draw as well.
So when she calls you, you sometimes feel it internally.
Yeah, sometimes it's an internal calling, but sometimes she'll be leaving and she'll just say to me, "Hey, hello, son, come to da-da-da." And I'll go wherever she says. She doesn't do it. She does it frequently, but not all the time.
And so people that don't know these people travel around, where do they find out that there's certain sages and saints coming to a town near them?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I've been really fortunate with is you kind of start to meet, I'd say like 2 or 3, and then you meet people there and they go, "Oh, do you know so-and-so's coming next week?" So there's been a lot of that. Also, I go to Indian temples a lot and there'll be a flyer for some yogi saint coming through. And then if that resonates with me, I'll go see them. So I've had a few of those moments, but honestly, a lot of it also was, I was just so committed to this journey and this path. Biography of Yogi, not surprising, was a huge influence on me. And I found that book and I thought, 2003, I said, I'm going to find these modern day yogi saints and just, and I knew that. And bit by bit, it started to happen more and more. And the upliftment and the peace that I feel in their presence. And also just, I love watching other people release stuff and watching them enter into more of their loving, peaceful, natural state. I heard someone once, I think it was Larry Brilliant, talking about Neem Karoli Baba. And he said, the thing about him that amazed me wasn't that he loved everyone. He's a saint. That's what saints are supposed to do. It was that when I was around him, I loved everyone. That was the miracle. And I thought that was a really beautiful way of summing it up. And from my viewpoint, and obviously it's my viewpoint, I see Amma Karunamai not just as a saint, and mind you, a saint is a great thing, but I see her as a maker of saints.
Yeah, that's similar to like leaders or, it's not that they're great. It's that they influence others to be great. Okay, that's amazing. Yeah, because it's like they have this field around them that you get wrapped up in and it influences how you are. And I think that that's their power, right? Is that they've got so much alignment that they're able to captivate and inspire audiences and people around them, like even in entire auditoriums or stadiums, where can bring all of these people to know what it is to feel like they feel, to a degree.
And I also think
I've been
oh, go.
I was going to say I've been to some of these meetings, we'll call it, with these saint type people, you know, like after you line up in a line and they're like touching everybody on the third eye. And some people are having like, when they did that, I saw my, like, they have like enlightening experiences. It's never happened tangibly for me like that. I've had plenty of experiences in my life where it is tangible, but like somebody touched me on the third eye. I haven't had anything like that. But I do know that other people do. Some people seek it. I also am like one of those people that you said, like, learning about psychic things with me isn't really of interest. It doesn't, for me, it's a little bit, if it comes to me, I accept it. But me walking into it or seeking for it doesn't feel resonant to me.
Yeah, I think people can get addicted to chasing the affirmation, wanting to hear that the future, everything's going to be okay. But I think everyone's at different levels in the journey. And I think it's really important that people act according to where they're at. And I think when you kind of know, hey, this isn't beneficial to me, or this isn't really in alignment with where I'm at, yeah, don't do it. But I think for a lot of people, especially going through really, really hard times, some of the affirmations and confirmations that they can get in a legit reading can be really uplifting.
All right. So you're seeing these people and they're living in this sort of like blissful state.
I would say even beyond the bliss. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Because I think bliss is wonderful, but I don't see that as a final stage.
Okay. I want to go on that tangent, but let me stay where I was going before. So like the state of the world are they living in this world, or like the people that are seeking to be with them or find themselves at their feet? Like, how do you relate to the state of this planet and the chaos that's seemingly going on? And how these people are existing within this world? Like what's the purpose? Like what's the relationship there?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, for a very long time, way before I came into this world and most other people, there's always been chaos. And I think the only difference now is we have these little phones and these TVs informing us of the chaos in many far off places on a non-stop feedback loop with very little emphasis on anything uplifting or positive happening anywhere, to the point that people think there is only chaos. I think that's very dangerous, and it's very common. And I don't think it's to pretend that those things aren't happening, but I think it's to focus on the things that are within our power to change. So in addition to her spiritual upliftment that she's offering people, she does free school, clean water initiatives in India, free hospitals, a lot of other things sort of dealing with the day-to-day of the modern world. But that is not their main focus. It's part of their mission, but they want to awaken people to the divinity within themselves. They want to awaken people to their own saintly nature. More so, you said something earlier, being in their field, how it impacts you. I see it more as an uncovering of what was always there, that the busyness of the mind, and perhaps being weighed down from karma from many lifetimes, we're not always able to pursue. And so it's their infinite supreme awareness that heightens our awareness, that allows us to see with more clarity and to feel more loving and peaceful.
I like what you said about that. It's almost like if you look into nature, into the forest, you've got all these different types of animals and plants, and sometimes they eat each other. The animal that gets eaten lived a pretty amazing life up until the point where it gets eaten. It has some close calls every once in a while, and then it has like one bad day. But if we were to show that animal 20 times a day, other animals getting eaten, it would kind of like ruin the life experience of
Yeah.
that. And that's what we're doing with the news and our devices. It's like we're all going to have ups and downs in our life and even one bad day. And it's going to come in different ways for everybody. But what we're doing is we're just force feeding ourselves to just view everybody else's bad days that are happening across the entire planet just over and over and over again. We're just putting it into our mind. And it's completely unnatural.
Because we didn't know about horrible things happening off in far off places in the world. We were more just aware of difficult things going on in our village, at one point, right? So that every minute of the news to notify you of another tragedy, another horrible moment somewhere in the world was not part of the regular human experience for a long time. And I think there are a lot of people that will tell people, oh, if you're not constantly informed, then you're delusional or you're checking out or all these things to shame and guilt
Spiritual
you.
bypassing.
Yeah, spiritually bypassing. That's and I always kind of laugh at that one because at the end of the day, from my viewpoint, whatever anyone's karma is, whether it's in this lifetime, later towards the end, or another one, you're going to have to face everything. There is no spiritual bypass. If anything, you could say a spiritual delay because whatever is coming for you because of karma from many lifetimes, that will come. And so the idea that you're so powerful that you could bypass it, it just seems kind of comical.
Right.
I get what they're trying to say, though, but
it's just really a way to cancel you.
Yeah.
Like it's basically they're just looking to cancel you. Like, hey, you think you're better than us?
Yeah, exactly.
And you
can't be happy. You can't be peaceful. And if you are, there's something wrong with you. One of my friends recently, who's on earlier stages of her spiritual journey, but really getting into it, and someone's like, "Wait, you're not on any pharmaceuticals? You're just out there raw dogging life?" And I was like, "Wow, that's the point that we've reached. That this world is so horrendous that you're either something's wrong with you or you're an exceptional freak that you don't need to be on a whole bunch of substances to basically cope."
I just Googled it. It says 64.8% of adults in the United States aged 18 and older reported taking prescription medications in the last 12 months, according to the CDC. That's nuts.
That's massive. And I have a saying about it. I say we're over-medicated because we're undereducated. And I think we have this thing also where doctors can be pressured by their patients to give me a pill to make this go better. And I think Western medicine has its place. I don't view Western medicine as a villain because I think that's the other side of the equation. But I think there's a lot of natural remedies, the power of the mind, and gifted mystics out there that can offer profound healing, not just emotionally and mentally, but physically. And I think we might have talked about this before, but if we look at the placebo effect, Western medicine acknowledges that the placebo effect is real. And then simultaneously, there's this invisible ceiling of how far it can go. That's not scientific. If they had a drug that was working, they wouldn't create an arbitrary limit for how much it could work without doing extensive research.
As long as they can make money off of it.
Yeah, exactly.
The placebo effect is real, and it's so real that they're having a hard time with their testings because the placebo effect is outperforming their drugs. And so that's why there's so much, there's not any looking into it, because then everybody would start thinking that they can just think themselves better. And you're looked at as a kook if you believe that. Yet it's like you said, it's scientifically validated that it can actually happen. And there's apparently only 35% of us that select out of pharmaceuticals in the last year. And that means that the majority of us have faith in Western medicine. I am more apt to believe and to just say outright that the medical industry is running a scam, even if they're doing good things. I mean, anyone running a scam or taking advantage of other people has a wing of their operation that is doing good. And so, yes, Western medicine is setting broken bones, and it's doing that. However, the majority of all of their income comes from prescribing and getting people addicted to pharmaceutical drugs. And that's the whole point of why they're setting your broken arm in a cast really quickly. It doesn't cost them much money to do that. It makes people feel good. And then they're just being super devious with this other part. And it's like the whole monetization of what they're doing relies on people being addicted to these drugs that don't work. Because if they worked, we wouldn't need to keep on taking them. So
I mean,
I don't know how we got on this topic,
but yeah, I mean, I think everything has its place in time, but I think without question, we are highly over medicated. And if we started to tap into the powers of our mind, became aware of our diet, started exercising more again, the lack of physical activity that the modern American has these days is astounding.
it's ridiculous.
You know?
So what's your relationship to death? Because that ultimately comes up in this conversation is like, well, it's going to keep people alive. And so I know there's certain cultures out there that will refuse certain medical treatments because they believe that life is a gift and we shouldn't try to grasp more of it than we were gifted. And so how do you feel about the concept of death? I know this is a big topic,
No.
but start
I
where
just
you'd like.
see death as you just going somewhere else and you're dropping this form and that's it. It's just another dimension, different people, different souls go to different dimensions. Some just fully merge with the infinite. You know, everyone's death after death experience will be different. There'll be some similarities, but it's just a different thing. And I think we're too attached to our identities and our stories in the body. And you even see this now with this whole, which I'm really uncomfortable with, the whole, they call it transhumanism that Peter Thiel talks a lot about. And they want to download their consciousness into a robot and live forever. And I'm looking at it as, well, the soul is already that. And it goes from this dimension maybe to another planet or other dimensions, and it will continue. It's this desire to control everything and this desire for power and this ultimate fear of death, the fear of the unknown. And they're trying to control the unknown.
I think that the fear of death is a program too, right? That's also not natural, is that we're fed horror movies where dying is bad and the news is just talking about dying, and everything is just about how do we keep a human alive as long as possible by any cost necessary. And then we've got, like, it's fed to us in the culture that when somebody dies, you should be sad, like you should be mad. Like, and there's other cultures in this planet that celebrate death.
Yeah.
And you throw a party when someone dies. And so I think that everyone that I grew up didn't grow up that way, and death is a bad thing, and it's scary and it's dark and it's lonely. And it's like this concept that we all have to build a relationship with because it's coming for us all.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
I embrace that. But I think, you know, it's always, life is so often this pendulum, right? It's this idea that death is bad, it's all scary, so let's live in fear and run from it. And then I can totally see how you can celebrate someone transitioning out of fear to the next phase of their journey, but also experiencing a sense of grief of missing seeing them around in my day-to-day life and interacting with them. And I think both these things can be integrated in a complete experience, but ultimately viewing it as a positive. And I feel that in the West, it is the worst thing that can happen if you can die.
right. Yeah. And so when it comes to some of these sages that you've seen, they die. Some of them transition on and they graduate to the next realm. And have you learned anything about what could possibly be on the other side of the veil from some of these people?
So I think reading Autobiography of a Yogi, there's a moment where his guru, Sri Yukteswar, resurrects himself in an astral form, but he could still physically touch it. I forget what chapter it is, but he goes into quite a bit of details And also the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, I think, does a really great job of talking about these different realms. And I think different levels of consciousness influence which realm you go to. And the less fear you have, less desire you have, the more you're just in a state of peace, loving, calm, the better that transition goes.
Yeah, I've heard of the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. I actually own the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is a different book.
That's the more hardcore, I guess you could say, if I recall correctly. It's not as Western friendly to reading, right? Like, I always forget which one's which, but I think, is that correct?
I haven't read it yet. I'm excited to, though. You know, these Bible length books. I've got a few of them to get through. But yeah, it's good for us to relate and to build a relationship with this thing that ultimately that's the direction that we're going. And if you back to the forest, death is a healthy part of life. Like if everybody lived forever, then like we all just like we will cease to exist. And so if you garden, you can see how leaves fall, they reincarnate back into the soil and then back up into the tree of life. And there's all this symbolism with trees and having to do with life, because I think that we're much like a leaf. We're part of the whole. We live. We've got motivations. We strive to be healthy and alive, but eventually we fall down and go back and join the earth again, and then become the tree.
No, I definitely feel that Western relationship with death is, the idea of prolonging life at all costs is not a healthy note.
You mentioned tapas earlier.
Yeah.
So elaborate a little bit on that, because you're talking about the lady that lived with tigers and you said tapas.
Yeah. So
are we talking about a Spanish dish?
Yeah, no, definitely not.
I know we're not. I know we're not.
Yeah. So tapas can be used different ways, but when I think of tapas, I think of the most extreme spiritual austerities where unless you're ready for, you can't do it. It's not a choice. It's not going to be like, I'm going to take a couple of years off and I'm going to try to do tapas. It's sort of, it overcomes you and you're just at that level and you basically stop sleeping and you go into this constant state of meditation, come out of it very briefly to do a few little things and then go back into this extreme meditation of the highest levels of samadhi. It's that over an extended course of years. And it can be done for the upliftment of humanity and also done for your own purification. So there was a book written by Shiva Rudra Bali Yogi, and he talks about his 5 years of tapas. And I think it's the best small little book I've ever read about a yogi explaining their tapas, because there's not a lot of conversation about tapas.
What was it called? Shiva
Rudra, Rudra. That's the first name. And then Shiva Rudra, and then space Bali Yogi, BALAYOGI.
You spelled that right.
And then the book is just called Tapas. I don't know if they're selling it online yet, but when he comes around the U.S., they'll sell it at his event.
Yeah, so it's like a state where you're in this extreme focus.
Yeah.
And I think even there's stories of Buddha being able, like going into meditation, and when he would come out of it, all the animals, like also like tigers, would be sleeping around him.
Yeah, he was doing
and so
tapas. Yeah, absolutely.
And so you're saying that this lady was doing this while living with 10 tigers.
I don't know how many. They would just come sit in front of her, watch over her. Not that she needed them to protect her, but they would just sit there. I saw a couple photos from her doing that back in the day. I don't happen to have any on me. But
there's
her nickname in the village was the Tiger Lady.
Okay. There's this book called Initiation, and it's about this lady who remembers past lives, and one of her past lives, she was a pharaoh's daughter, and she remembers the initiation practices that she went through to become a high priestess. And if you remember, like from on the walls in Egypt, there's always lions around them. And what she explains is that she had the elong-headed, like she was the elong-headed being. So she remembers her past lives when they were like had the long head.
Yeah.
She would call it that. She said they were the sons of gods, and she would say that because they were at this ascended level, that their vibrational frequency was in tune with these big cats, probably tigers being one of them, which we hear on a different part of the world. Like over towards India, we hear stories of tigers, but this is like a different part of the world where they're lions. And she said that they have to hold this frequency for the lions to sort of be almost like in trance around them, like loyal to them. But the moment they come out of that higher level focus, the lion will attack. And that actually, like, I don't want to ruin the book, but eventually that she has an issue with that because she falls from her frequency and has a problem with the lion.
So the more advanced people doing tapas, at some point there is no falling out. They're constantly in there. There's no maybe early on in the tapas before the full purification has happened. But from my understanding with Ama Kurunamai, she came in knowing who she was. And her tapa was more for the upliftment of humanity than it was for her own purification. But that's not always the case with everyone's tapa.
Mm-hmm.
There's different levels and degrees of tapa.
Right. Yeah, of course. And so you mentioned several books. What books are some of your most recommended that you tell people to read?
I really love Holographic Universe, especially if you live in the Western world, because it just goes over different miraculous phenomena and then talk about from the holographic model things and dealing with quantum physics, quantum mechanics, how that could happen. And I think it's a really good to understand that in a world that's so dismissive of anything metaphysical, mystical, supernatural. We're so quick to write it off instead of a deeper exploration. And they give different understandings of quantum mechanics of, okay, well, this is how that could happen. This is one way we could see that being done.
You know, it's funny. I actually bought that book when I had to have been like 20 years old or something. And because I remember having it in Michigan, and I moved to California when I was 23. So at some point under 23 years old, I bought that book, but I couldn't understand it at that age. I don't even know if I still have it because that was one thing I brought out to California. It was all my books. But yeah, I'll touch base into that. But a hologram, and I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, but that book would have to do with the point that like a hologram, doesn't matter how small you cut a hologram, it will show the picture of the whole hologram within any single slice that you cut out of the hologram. It'll just be less defined. And so a holographic universe is referring to the fact that we are a little slice of the whole universe. And so within us, there's a gateway to access everything within the entire universe. Every life, every memory, every action is accessible through us. Is that why you're recommending?
Kind of how I see it. That's what the betas are saying. Within one atom in our body is the entire cosmos. And we'll eventually develop different tools and instruments to measure things that we can't even dream of measuring. But I feel that even with the tools that we do have to measure, there's enough to make a compelling case that we should put more money and resources to delving into and seeing what's possible.
Speaking of animals, we're getting some questions.
Cool.
Do you feel... No, the question exactly is why do certain people attach to different species? Do you have an answer for that?
Well, I believe in spiritual evolution. So you may start off as a mineral, you become a plant, you become an animal. And I think a lot of times your connection to that animal, if you've been that animal, or you have worked closely with that animal in another lifetime. So I think those are two reasons why that
makes sense. And especially if you think about time as not being linear, and that when you were that animal, that's actually existing now.
Yeah. That's the wild thing. All of our lives are unfolding now. And
Right.
that's mind blowing, is that all of our lifetimes are.
Yeah, based on that framework, and what you said, I view it as like, for some reason, the life that you lived as an ant is speaking to you. And so when you see ants, it's almost like that channel is opened for you to notice something, right? Like everything we look at is a reflection of how we're looking at it. It's a reflection of ourself. And so if you just like let that open up, you can receive the message that's being transmitted to you.
And I also think they always hear it, everything's one. It's just our awareness of that oneness is not always as front and center.
Oneness, right?
Yeah.
It's even baked into the word universe,
Yeah.
right? One verse, one song.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's all just this one collective consciousness, and there's different expressions of it.
Yeah. And like even Carl Jung, who's like very like foundational in psychology, he was super adamant about what he called the collective unconscious. There's the thing that, and it's the same as collective consciousness. It's just we're all connected, and how we're connected is based on how open we are to that connection. Because if we're shutting the door, then obviously we're not going to be able to integrate with the whole.
I think one of the coolest things going back to seeing all these yogis and saints is, there are all these people at the event. You're meditating a lot. You don't necessarily talk to too many, but you will talk to some. And just the way your lives will have so many parallels and things that are in common that have brought you to this place and time to be with this particular mystic saint. And, that's why you're there. So us having similar karmas as someone else and meeting in these settings.
Yeah, I find the same thing. I find that how I view myself and how I feel about myself, I see in everybody around me. And the sad part is that there's been a time in my life where I wasn't very open and accepting of myself. I hit puberty really late, and so I was always like the smallest kid in my class, got picked on. And so there's always this sort of like self-hatred about like, why can't I be more attractive? Why can't I be stronger? Why am I, why is my family not rich? And so there's all these like judgments on self, but it just got projected outwards. And it was like, I was just looking down on everybody else, but it was really just me looking down at myself. And as I started to, that's why I went to school for psychology, because I wanted to learn more about, school didn't really teach me much. I found more in books and life experience than I did in university. But as I started to evolve my relationship with self, I just noticed that everybody, my perspective of everybody else started to get uplifted as well.
Yeah. One of the things I like to do when you're around someone who has a particularly destructive tendency is I try to look at myself, and though it may not be as exacerbated, try to find aspects of that within myself and sort of seeing, hey, if I don't uproot this is a potential outcome in front of me.
Yeah. It's like they're there for a reason. They're an important part of your life journey. That is the first thing we learn in psychology, like Psychology 101. The things that we don't like about other people are the things that we don't like about ourselves. The things that we admire about other people are the things that we admire about ourselves. So anything else going on with you that's exciting to talk about?
I've just, I think we talked about the first time you interviewed me, but I made this YouTube series and I'm still promoting it. It's called Spiritual Schmuck. And there's 7 episodes about my trip to Cuba to see a famous machete psychic surgeon. And what I'm trying to do with Spiritual Schmuck, and would like to do more of, is filming miracles around the world, all different cultures, places, different modalities, and just sort of showing people these things exist and doing it in a way that's informative, but is also to make a joke. And I want people to be able to laugh as well. Because a lot of people, I don't think they're ready to fully go all into this. It's too scary. But if I can make them laugh along the way, I feel I kind of open the door a little bit. And so that's one of the things I get really excited about. I remember in the comment section, someone wrote, I don't know if I believe any of this, but this is really entertaining. And I felt, oh, that's good.
Yeah. So you can look up Spiritual Schmuck on YouTube
Mhm.
and follow, subscribe. Episode 1, El Machete, which is about the guy that does psychic surgery with the machete.
Yeah. And he also uses
Uh,
hooks, hammers, and one other thing. But yeah, like it's pretty intense. And it was
Did you do stand-up comedy at some
yeah, I
point
love
in your
comedy.
life?
I haven't done much of it recently. Every now and then, um, I just didn't find those scenes to be particularly uplifting. They didn't have the kind of vibe that I was looking for. I
Yeah,
love
and you
comedy.
were a rapper too,
Yes,
right?
I did a lot of freestyle rapping. Um, the thing though I'm more drawn to these days, certain sound vibrations, mantras. But yeah, no, I on occasion I'll still bust it out. When I was in Bali, I found this open mic and I did a freestyle. I hadn't done it in a while, and it was really well received. It was great to pull that out every now and then.
I forgot about your mantra. So, could you, or the sound that you do,
Sure.
could you bless
Yeah,
us with some frequency, some
absolutely.
vibes?
Here we go.
Thank you. I felt that.
What one of?
You know, even
Oh, go.
I think the microphone doesn't pick up those super super high
Uh,
frequencies, but I could still
okay.
feel it.
I was going to say that one of the things that I try to remind people that are trying to meditate but struggling, mantras, sound frequencies that you're guided to make, they're sort of priming the pump that when it's
Mhm.
time to just sit, meditate, and be quiet, it's so much easier. And if you're not chanting Om or some practice along those lines, when it's time to meditate, you're confronted with the speed of your thoughts and all the things you've been trying to ignore. So a constant mantra practice, in my own experience, and many others, is really beneficial to you.
I agree. It's it sort of brings you out of the day-to-day life of paying bills and worrying what somebody said about you and how many likes on Instagram, and it like brings you into the sound current that you are both making and listening to and feeling, and it's like tuning your everything in your body. And I like the word prime because that primes you to then sit within that, as opposed to the laundry list of things that our mind is fixated on.
And I think people need to reframe how they view meditating. A lot of meditation at first is an attempt, and there's a lot of unresolved mental and emotional obstructions that have to come up so that you can get your innate state of peace. So don't say I tried meditating, it didn't work for me. Yeah, it didn't work for the identity that you're holding on, but who you really are beyond that, it always uplifts. It's a process to get back to who you are because there's so much piled on top of you that we've identified about who we're not.
So you're saying, I like that. You're saying that who you're being now is sort of like this misidentification of who you're being isn't going to be open to
Yeah,
meditation. And as you shift, which is one way to shift is meditation, but as you shift, it'll fall in line with you and you'll be able to feel it.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, because that isn't a big issue. I started meditating when I was 19, and I used techniques. I even used
Yeah,
colors, just visualizing colors, which is kind of the same as mantra, but instead of the frequency of sound, it's the frequency of colors. So I used techniques to clear the noise. And I remember it was weeks of me doing that before I really felt like I was like getting into it. And it's hard for me to even think back to what that was like. But I know that if people have never meditated before, that they have that obstacle to get through of, as you say, becoming who you really are. I like that.
And that's all I want for everyone. I just want people to become who they are and stop identifying with the suffering. It's not to suppress the suffering. It's to go beyond it.
Hey, so what is your Instagram handle?
Nomad for hire.
With no dots or
no dots, no underscores, just Nomad for hire.
So at Nomad for Hire on Instagram, Spiritual Schmuck on YouTube. Still no website,
no.
Right?
Probably
no phone.
No, I have a phone. People need my number for some greater project or they want to do sessions. I'm available. But yeah, it's funny. People for many years always thought I did have a phone.
Well, because I also didn't have an email from you and you're contacting me from Facebook. And so that's why I was like, well, it kind of just makes sense he's using Facebook.
No, I don't know what it was. I think you'd like your story had popped up and it made me think. So I just immediately, that's where I saw you. So that's like, let me reach out. But I love a lot of things you're doing, Ra, and I hope you continue to help people find balance and harmony and health in their life, and to give them inspiration and motivation to overcome the challenges that they're.
Well, as we were saying earlier, that's all just yourself reflecting onto me, and yeah, I see the same in you, man. It's pleasure. I've met you in real life, had a lot of conversations outside of the Air One health food store. And it's cool that you're traveling around and having impact on so many people. The people that are meant to cross your path are crossing your path, which is cool.
Always. And I actually, here's a little interesting nugget from the Nadi Leaf reading. So it's a short-term prediction. And they said that this year, related to internet stuff, that I'd be famous. I don't know how they quantify that, but that's what they said. So that would basically be between April of 2025, where your birthday is, April 17th for me, to April 17th of next year. So we'll see how accurate that short-term prediction is.
Yeah, we'll observe it. Yeah. We'll watch the show. It'll be fun.
I want to bring other people along with me on some of these adventures to see some of these great mystics and people with these different abilities. It just opens up people's minds. I don't think these abilities are the end all be all, but in a world that's so materialistic, that is so shutting things out, that's outside of their regular worldview, I think it's important to show things that are observable, objectifiable, putting it in the zeitgeist.
Yeah, putting it into the program so that our next generations are growing up with this stuff being what they learn about and what they get to experience, as opposed to the video games and the TV news and the pointless stuff taught in school. Yeah, it'll be exciting. I mean, because that's up to us. I mean, the future generations are integrated because of what we do. And so, yeah.
We're laying the groundwork.
It'll be a fun watch.
Well,
all right, brother.
Thank you for having me.
Let's end this.
Yeah, really.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. All right. We are